Good morning and happy Sabbath. It's a blessing to be able to spend some time contemplating the church family and what God has done for us. You know, it was the month of May that we first began here in this church, 3 years ago, I believe it was. See what God has wrought over this time, and what a blessing that we have a church family that we do. As Andrew has made a public confession today, showing the choices he's made and what he believes as an individual, I want to share with you a story that I just recently came across. It's the story of a lady called Christina. She was brought up in Sydney. She had Greek parents. They lived in government-assisted housing. It's a fairly simple life that she lived. She had two brothers, one older, one younger. And in her family, it was a simple but a busy city life. But one day when she was 33 years old, she was sitting in a cafe in Sydney. She was just going about some of her work and contemplating things. And her brother called her. It was nothing unusual. They had a lot to do with each other. Her brother George said, "I've just got some paperwork from the government and it says that I'm adopted." She laughed. It was something they often joked about. Whenever someone in the family done anything a little bit different, "Oh, you must be adopted." I think we can all relate to that. And she said, "I think you better go back and tell them they've got the wrong person." He hung up and she continued with what she was doing. A little bit later, he rang back again. He said, "No. They haven't got the wrong person. They've got all my details of everything that happened to me before I met what we know as Mum and Dad." He said, "I am adopted." He says, "I'm not sure how to process this. This is something that I haven't understood. I haven't had any comprehension of this in my life before." He said, "I'm going to go and visit Mum." Now, Christina was a little worried. What's going to happen when he goes to confront Mum? So she packed up and took off to Mum's place as well. She arrived at Mum's place just as he was handing over the documents. And he said, "Mum, what's the story here?" Mum said to him, "George, it's something that I thought you'd probably never ever learn about. Back in the 60s, it was very much a closed adoption process. When you were handed over to your new parents, that was your new life, that was your new identity. You needed to know nothing about what had come before that. But your father, he died a number of years ago. They had agreed that children would never be told. They were totally part of this family." And you can imagine where George is at in this situation right now. Now, Christina, being Greek, thought, well, the solution to everything is food. So she decided to get out of and go to the kitchen and start preparing something. So she went to the kitchen, and about 15 minutes later, her mum came in and had a fairly serious look on her face, and she said, "Christina, while we're talking about these things, do you want to know the whole truth? You're adopted as well." You realise how much this struck this 33-year-old young lady and her brother. As it turned out, yes, the two children had both been adopted into this family, but she starts to process, well, who am I? Who really am I? Am I Greek? All these things that I've been through, the difficulties growing up, is that all false? Who am I really? And you know, that's a question we all need to ask ourselves. Who am I really? Do we really understand where we have come from? And as she was contemplating this, she thought, everything changed in my life. All of a sudden, I don't really know who I am. And she was back at her home sometime later, and she was contemplating these things, and it's a journey. If any of you have ever been on a similar journey, it may not have been this, but other big things you've had to face in your life, big questions you've had to ask yourself. And she was processing this, and it wasn't too much later that her paperwork came from the government as well. It was some policies that had changed at government level, and they were releasing this information to people. She got her envelope and she opened it up. She knew what was in there, but still she spent some time opening this and just starting to read through the information in there. Who am I really? And as she continued to look at this, she came across a section that said birth name, unnamed, child 2508 of 1966. She said, I didn't even have a name. My mother didn't even name me. I just got a number. I'm number 2508. She said that hit her harder than anything else. She obviously wasn't wanted. Where did she come from? Was she as a result of a rape? Was she from an abusive relationship? Where did she come from? The information wasn't there. She was just child 2508. She thought to herself, my mother didn't even want me. I was given away without even being given a name. And as she was there, she saw her Bible on the table, and she picked up that Bible. She was looking for some comfort. The verse she turned to was Isaiah 49 and verse 1. If you've got a Bible, turn to this book, Isaiah 49 and verse 1. It's not a part of the Bible she'd spent much time in. It's probably not a part of the Bible many of us spend much time in. It was more by accident than anything that she came across this verse. And as she started to look down and she was reading through it, it says, Listen, O isles, unto me, and hearken, ye people from far. The Lord hath called me from the womb, from the bowels of my mother hath he made mention of my name. And then she realised she's got two documents in front of her, both are paper with black and white ink on it. One of them says that she is child 2508. The other one says that God has named her from the womb. Both are hard to believe. But at that time, she realised, of these two documents, I need as much faith to believe one as I do the other. And from that time, she accepted that from the womb, God had named her. God had chosen her. Now, the name she did end up having was Christina, the one that belongs to Christ. And as she started to process this more and more, she said, I'm adopted into God's family just as much as I might have been adopted into another loving, caring family. And when she made this choice to accept that adoption, the adoption that God had given her, she realized that adoption is actually a higher form of love. It's a love of choice. And as she realized that she was part of God's family by her choice, because God had not only chosen her, but you know what? He had paid an incredible price so that she could be part of the family. Each one of us have been chosen to be adopted into the family of God. We are there by the right of our birth on this planet as a child of God, but you know what? We've all made foolish choices. We've all sinned and turned away from God. We've all spat in the face of the one who created us. And yet he says, I'm going to pay an incredible price so that you can be my child yet again. And today we've seen Andrew has made a public confession to say, yes, I want to be one of his children. And Andrew, we admire that choice that you've made to publicly do that. But you know, each one of us in our hearts needs to make that same choice. Now, some of us, maybe we've been members of the church for a long time. Maybe some of us are contemplating that. But I want to encourage each one of you, when God has written in his word that I have named you, right from the womb, he means that. He wants each one of us to be his child. We read in the scripture, I want us to turn to another verse in here in Isaiah 43 in verse 1. Just back a couple of chapters. So perhaps a little more well-known verse, Isaiah 43, verse 1. But now saith the Lord that created thee, O Jacob, that he has formed thee, O Israel, fear not, for I have redeemed thee. I have called thee by thy name, thou art mine. And then the promise goes on and says, when thou passest through the waters, I will be with you. And through the rivers, they shall not overflow thee. When thou walkest through the fire, thou shalt not be burned, neither shall the flame kindle upon thee. For I am the Lord thy God, the Holy One of Israel, thy Saviour. I gave Egypt for thy ransom, Ethiopia and Seba for thee. Since thou wast precious in my sight, thou hast been honourable. I have loved thee. Therefore will I give men for thee and people for thy life. Fear not, for I am with thee. I will bring thy seed from the east and gather thee from the west. You know, God has made that promise. He says, I've called you by your name, you're mine. Are we going to hold on? Are we going to hold on to that one who has claimed us like that? You know, right from the time of the promise to Abraham, God has continually called and called and called his people. You remember that God called Abraham from Ur of the Chaldees, a place that was not known to be the nicest part of the world. Sure, it might have been beautiful, but it was wicked. And God called Abraham out of there. He said, I'm going to choose you to be a special people. He made a promise, and it was 25 years before Abraham had his own son in his arms. For some of us, it might seem like a long time from when God calls us to when we really find that purpose. But God has that purpose for us. He called Abraham. He led him into a different place. He was on a journey. Each one of us is on a journey of some sort as well. And when Abraham was taken to another place, physically, and as we examine, it's interesting if you examine the journey he went on, the names of the different places and the meaning of those names. It's an incredible study in itself. But the place he brought him to was Bethel, which means the house of God. That's where he wants to draw you. He wants to draw you to his house so that you can be part of his family. And while Abraham was there in that promised land, Abraham did some things that weren't the wisest. And I think some of us can relate to that in our spiritual journey as well. But yet God is saying, no, you're mine. I'm going to make you like the sands of the sea and like the stars. It's a promise that he had, and Abraham never really saw that fulfilled. His descendants end up in Egypt. Now, Egypt, symbolically, as we look through prophecy, is always a symbol of the world. And God's people ended up in Egypt for a period of time, and then came a time where God wanted to call them out of Egypt. In the meantime, they've rather rutted in the way of Egypt there. Come with me to Exodus, and let's just have a little bit of a look at the story of what God was going to do to call his people, those he had named as his, to bring them out. Come to Exodus chapter 11. As we lead up to this point, we see in the chapters from 7, we've got the plagues. We've got the frogs, the lice, the flies, the beasts, the locusts, the darkness. And in chapter 11, it says, And the Lord said to Moses, Yet will I bring one plague more upon Pharaoh and upon Egypt. Afterwards he will let you go thence. When he shall let you go, he shall surely thrust you out thence altogether. And so we have that Moses goes to Pharaoh once again and says to him, the firstborn of all the nation are going to die. And Pharaoh is rather heartened by this time. Moses went out and he goes back to the people of God, but there's some special instruction for the people of God during this plague. The people of God also need to make a choice. And as we see there in chapter 12, that let's read verse. Where shall we start? Let's start at the beginning of chapter 12. And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months, it shall be the first month of the year to you. Speak ye unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, In the 10th day of this month they shall take of them every man a lamb according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for a house. And if the household be too little for a lamb, let him and his neighbour next unto his house take it according to the number of the souls. Every man according to his eating shall make your count for the lamb. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. Ye shall take it out from the sheep or from the goats, and ye shall keep it until the 14th day of the same month, and the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening. And they shall take of the blood, and strike it on the 2 side posts, and on the upper doorposts of the houses wherein they shall eat. And they shall eat the flesh in that night, roast with fire and unleavened bread, and with bitter herbs they shall eat it. Eat not of it raw, nor sodden at all with water, but roast with fire, his head with his legs, and the purtenance thereof. And ye shall let nothing of it remain unto the morning, and that which remaineth of it in the morning ye shall burn with fire. And so we see here the Passover is being instituted here. You have a choice. Do you want to identify yourself with the people of God? And the symbol was the blood of the lamb had to be applied. And that's what we see happening here, that the lamb, which we saw in our Sabbath school, represents Christ himself. The blood was to be applied to the household, Bethel, the house of God. And as the people did this, we see as we continue to read that when the angel of death came to strike the firstborn, if there was a house that had the blood applied, if that choice had been made, the angel would pass over and leave that home. You know, the responsibility of the head of each household was quite incredible at this time. They couldn't say, oh no, it's a busy day for us today, we happen to have someone's birthday. There was no excuses to be made. The choice had to be made, will we accept what God has requested or will we not? It wasn't the evening to be out for the evening, for the children to be away. It was a time to be gathered together into the household of faith. And as we read in verse 12, For I will pass through the land of Egypt this night, and will smite all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment. I am the Lord. And the blood shall be to you a token upon the houses where ye are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over, and the plague shall not come upon you to destroy you when I smite the land of Egypt. You know, we know that there is coming a time of judgment for this world, but we don't have to be a part of that judgment because we have been promised that if we choose to be part of the house of God, that we will be passed over. And so a ceremonial remembrance was set up, and from this time on, we know the very next day the children of Israel began their journey out of Egypt. And then the Passover was to be celebrated yearly, as a yearly celebration that these people have chosen to be part of the family of God and that God will keep his promises. And it's interesting, as we continue throughout the story, we go through the time of the establishing in Canaan, we go through the latter years, and we get through to the time when Jesus himself is here on earth. Come with me over to the Gospel of Luke. And we see the same Passover service is still being celebrated at the same time of year. Remember, it said there that it was the beginning of the year. This is the beginning of our journey, the beginning of what God is doing for us. Come with me to Luke chapter 22. Right at the beginning of the chapter, now the feast of unleavened bread drew nigh, which is called the Passover, and the chief priests and the scribes sought how they might kill him, for they feared the people. Here we have this very Passover that was acknowledgement from the past of what God had done for them, but not only that, it pointed forward to the actual lamb that was to be slain. And we see at this very time, what are the chief priests and scribes seeking to do? They're seeking to kill the lamb. They don't realize it's the lamb. That's the problem. They are doing it out of malice in their hearts. And then as we continue to read through this story, we see in verse 7, then came the day of unleavened bread, when the Passover must be killed. And he sent Peter and John, saying, go and prepare us the Passover, that we may eat. And they said to him, where will that we prepare? And he said, behold, when ye are entered into the city, there shall come a man to meet you, bearing a pitcher of water. Follow him to the house where he entereth in. And ye shall say unto the good man in the house, the master saith unto thee, where is the guest chamber where I can eat the Passover with my disciples? And he shall show you a large upper room furnished, and there make ready. And they went, and they found as he had said unto them, and they made ready the Passover. It continues on and says in verse 14, and when the hour was come, he sat down, and the 12 apostles with him, and he said to them, with desire I have desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. For I say unto you, I will not any more eat thereof until it be fulfilled in the kingdom of God. You see, we see here that the same ceremony that was established many thousands of years ago is still being conducted here because it was still pointing forward. And Jesus says, I'm really looking forward to this Passover time together. And part of the reason is it's going to be the last one. This Passover is going to be fulfilled. And as we understand the story here, we know that the disciples had a lot of pride, a lot of arrogance at this time. And the very first thing that Jesus did is he said, listen, let me serve you. And he knelt down and he took the cloth and he took the water and he washed their feet. Because he says, I'm not too proud to be your servant and to serve you. And as we read, I got a short quote here. Let me just lay my eyes on it again. The ordinance of Christ's appointed preparation for the sacramental service, while pride, variance, and strife for supremacy were cherished, the heart cannot enter into the fellowship with Christ. We are not prepared to receive the communion of his body and his blood. Therefore it was that Jesus appointed the memorial of his humiliation to be first observed. What that's talking about there, that's from Counsels for the Church. As they came together, Jesus first said, before we fulfill the Passover, we need to realize that humility is most important. Remember, they were striving who was going to be the greatest, who was going to be part of Jesus' kingdom on the left and the right. Jesus says humility is where it needs to start. And he set that example with the foot washing. And we're told quite clearly here that this part of the service was very much an important part that was also to be remembered. Jesus said, I have done this. You should do the same to others. Not just wash people's feet when they've come in, but that humiliation, that service of humility. We're going to take some time right now and we're going to separate and go to the hall to participate in this ceremony. And I want you to remember as we do so that Jesus is the one that set this example for us. We'll go out to the back there, the men to the back portion of the hall and the women to the front portion. We'll have a word of prayer before we begin out there together, but I want you to contemplate what Jesus has done for us and the example that he has given. There will also be some, for those who would choose to remain here, there'll be a video played that will help explain this, especially to the children. But let's all go and participate in this part of the service.